Hello everybody, welcome back. djvicvapor with you. So in the previous tutorial on this series, I'd mentioned that we finalized the arrangement and went through and added everything and kind of got it down to a nice little track. And it's sounding pretty good for us. Let's take a listen. While I was away, I turned on the studio speakers and kind of dialed in a few different, mostly just volume adjustments, because when you do the tutorials, it's easier using headphones to get the microphone to interact with the audio as well. So a lot of times on the headphones, you don't hear things as clear as you want. So anyhow, moving forward, the purpose of this addition to the series here, I didn't plan on it, but I thought about it afterwards. And I thought, well, I've gone through all the steps. We've gone through the groove, the elements, the arrangement, all the way up to here, some EQ and compression work. But let me show you one more step that I don't see too often talked about or shared. What I want to do now is we want to export all these files we have as individual files, and then we want to bring them back into another Ableton template, and we want to kind of fine-tune, re-EQ, rebalance, and just start the mix-down process. And that's real important because it's easy as a young producer to kind of think, okay, it sounds great, I've got it all. And you can do that. Actually, I've spent, early on, I'd spend hours just kind of really dialing down what I have right here in the project, and going from there and just exporting it out as one file and saying, here you go, to an engineer, a mastering engineer, and saying, here's my file. And that's worked. I mean, I have no problem with that method. But if you really want to get a cleaner, crisper, and just a better process, mixing down is really, it's something you need to take the extra time to do and really consider. So what you want to do is, here you are, you've got everything kind of where you want it. You want to go to File, Export, and then up here it's usually set to master. You want to click all individual tracks. I typically like to advise to have the dither off because I think it'll come probably already set on one of those, depending on which one you typically have it there. Turn the dither off because this isn't the final wave file, and dither really is something you want to concentrate on when you're going to convert this down into an MP3 format. I'm not going to sit here and be a rocket scientist and explain dithering, but for this particular reason right here, we want to go with dither off. Now these other settings are my personal choices. They're not the right or wrong ones. They're just my personal choices. I like to do things at a 4800 hertz sample rate and at least 16 bits. Sometimes I do 24. It just depends on my choices or my taste or the material. But for this tutorial, I'm going to leave it where it is here. And then you want to go to Export after you've got everything set up for you. Now that's going to ask you where you want to export it to, and you can see I've already done that to save the time because the exporting can take, depending on the source material, could take 2 or 3 minutes up to 10 minutes. So I didn't want to put a tutorial up here with you guys just watching a progression bar go by. That's kind of like watching paint dry, and that's boring. So I've already exported them. I saved a little package on the or a little folder on the desktop called stems, and went ahead and hit export and let the computer do its thing. We're going to cancel all this, and then from there you just want to go File, New Set, and then bring everything in. But I've already saved us time there, so I've got it all right here for us, titled Stems. I don't really need to save this. It's already been saved. So here's everything. Once it went to the stems folder, I went in here and I just clicked Add Folder, and I selected the stems folder from the desktop, and it put it right into the project for us. And then here's all the individual waveforms that it exported. So then what you want to do is there's some you really don't need. I mean, it's your choice, but like I didn't want the A reverb send, I didn't want the B delay, and I didn't need the empty drum rack up here. So I can bring those in, I guess. I mean, it wouldn't hurt anything. Let me go ahead and bring them in. And kind of an important thing here is to, when you bring your stems into the Ableton this way, depending on your settings and your preferences, it may automatically try to warp the WAV file. You want to make sure that's turned off, because if it warps it, it's not going to warp it in line with all the other elements. You want to just have warp off, so that when all the stems come in, because they're already beat matched, all you got to do is make sure they're all the same length and lined up, but you just pay attention to the warp. So if you bring your stems into a project and you hit play and it sounds like they're all out of time, you might want to go back and pay attention to the warp on each individual wave. So let me, what is this? Reverb. Maybe give this a quick name here. Reverb. Oh, reverb. Send. And where's the delay? And you watch. I mean, I just have things set up to warp, so let me take that off. Delay. Send. I don't even know if I used that, but I figure I might as well bring it in. But anyhow, there we are. So all of our stems now are nice and neatly packaged right here for us. This reference guy, I'll leave him on the bottom. That's the actual wave itself. I have it turned off, but it's a reference to show us kind of where the elements should fall or should play, just in case we're feeling like they're not lined up properly. This guy looks like it's a little off. See how it's not quite lined up with the rest? You can just pull it out there, but that's not what you want to do. What you really want to do is change the start position right there, and it should line it up for us. Hit save. And there we go. So everything looks like it's in line. We've got everything the way we want. So at this point, my goal now is to mix down. So we know the track's all organized and arranged right. Let's go in and further EQ, compress, and just, really clean up the elements and glue them all together, and then we'll export that out as one file. And that typically is where you want to be. Maybe in that last file after it's exported from here, maybe give it one more slight polish, but that's typically the file for me that would go out to the mastering engineer. And then I would have that file set up in whatever specs the mastering engineer expects to have, sometimes with a 5 or 6 second blank lead in and a 5 or 6 second blank lead out, and the proper headroom that they request, usually -6 dB, somewhere in there, usually works out pretty good. But once you get to know your mastering engineers and understand their likes and their needs, I mean, you can dial in those little things on your own. Let's go through this process. Let's listen to it and kind of polish it up and export it out. And you'll notice right away a huge difference from this file right here. This is a file that typically most people would say, okay, that's it, I'm done, or whatever. But makes a big difference to mix down this way. So let me just start from the beginning, make sure everything's matched up and BPMs are all right. And as it's playing, I'm going to go ahead and label things over here and organize them in the way I'm used to seeing them. So just go ahead and we'll take a listen to it and make sure everything sounds good, and we'll label. so everything's labeled. Now let me just kind of, and this is just my preference. I kind of have OCD when it comes to clean projects, so I like percussion on top, basically, just so because my eye wants to look for it up there. So kick, percussion, hats. Let's go. Let's put bass under there. Harp lead. Where's my stabs? Stabs. Crash glitch. Impact pad can go under there. Let's put the box under there. Yeah, it's pretty good. So I kind of like that arrangement. So let's go through these guys. What do we got going on right here? Sounds pretty decent. Let's take a look at it though. LA2A, never go wrong with that bad boy. Let's see, drum group. Let me hear what that sounds like before I do anything. Don't sound too bad. Hertz sounds pretty good. Giving it some really nice punch there. I like that. Let's work on the hats a little bit here. Let's see what we can find for our hats. And again, if I haven't already said it, it's important to know that this part of the process isn't really a heavy-handed part. Everything's extremely subtle, you know, and it's just minute little changes. We're trying to just glue things together and make them all sound better and kind of like one big happy family. So throughout this part of the process, I try not to do things too heavy-handed unless I feel like that's the direction it needs to go. Oftentimes it's the slightest adjustment that you probably don't even think's making a difference, but it can in the long run when it's all exported out as one long track here. So let's hear this guy in the mix and then away from it. I don't really like that one for some reason. Let's find something else. Yeah, that sounds a little bit better. on this guy. You can hear that reverb kind of sizzling pretty hard on the top. I want to tame that down a little bit. It's a little bit better there. See how that sounds. Mr. Bassman, let's get you some action here. Another beautiful thing about this, you see me messing around with some of the wave stuff, is now because we've bounced everything over, it doesn't push the CPU as hard to get some of these plugins involved. So that's another beautiful thing about this process, or doing it this way, is now you can come back and revisit plugins that normally may, in the actual project file or folder, might really stress the CPU a little bit. So it's kind of actually years ago what led me to do it this way, is I just wanted to minimize how hard I was working the CPU. Alright, what was I going for here? Some equalization. Where are you? Let me get you out here. Again, this is all on headphones, so I could be not hearing things as clearly as I like. Usually this is done at a pretty nice level on my studio speakers. So let's move on down the system here. Let's give this guy a little excitement, a little sheen, a little high-end excitement. Let's see what we can come up with here. There it comes, coming to life. trying to, I don't want the vocal necessarily sitting out front, so I was trying to separate it maybe middle to back of the mix. Trying to find that nice little balance for it. It's difficult to do with headphones, but let's see what we can do with a crash. Where are you at? Probably don't have to do a whole lot there. What's going on with this glitch? Where's the H delay? ARP lead just a little too happy there. A little too happy to pronounce itself. Alright, so let's group some stuff together here and get some glue on it. Sorry about that. Phone call in the middle of the session. Alright, so sounds pretty good actually. Nice and just giving it a little glue type sound to it here. So let's put the drum group. take the vocals, I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to pan it, because I think it's clashing with this ARP lead. So let's see if we can move it out of the way a little bit. Yeah, it sounds a little bit better. Opens it up a little bit. So let's group these guys. Vocal group. And bring down the volume a little bit now that we've got 2. So I'm going to bring it down at least 2 dB, maybe a little more. Let's go 2.5. Going to hear the master, give it a final polish, and export this bad boy. far as I can hear in my headphones, it's reasonable. I have a feeling when I hit the studio speakers, though, it's going to be a few things to be desired. But that's the general idea. Export, mix down, and then we'll get this guy out to one file. And we'll see what we got. So that's what we've been listening to, but let's listen real quick here to the reference file. Let me activate it. And we'll kind of A/B what's going on here. So what we can do is turn these guys off. And let's hear what we've got from the original WAV file from our first project. A little bit more life to it, a little bit more clarity. Probably not the best I could do, just wanted to kind of give you the basic concept of what we were trying to achieve here, and an additional step that you can go on your own tracks to get them sounding a little bit better, especially get them club worthy anyway. I'm going to stop it here and not put you through the pain of seeing an export screen come up and watching a progress bar. Hopefully this has helped you learn something. Let's move on to another tutorial. I think I'll wrap it up in this series for this session right here. I can export this out and bring it back in another video and show you, the final step there, but I think you guys kind of get it from here. So thanks for push and play. Thanks for tuning in, and catch you on the next lesson.